All right. Okay, I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the NFP Review Board for Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. Nolan, will you please call roll?
Hollander?
Here.
Frederickson?
Here.
Rowe?
Here.
Bergia? Stemple?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Bassett?
Here.
Can I please get a motion to excuse absent members?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Adoption of the agenda, item B. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Yes, so moved.
Support.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Hearing none opposed. Moving on to item C, approval of the minutes. Approval of the meeting minutes from the Natural Features Protection Review Board on February 24th, 2026. Let's see, motion to approve. Can I please get oops, excuse me. Are there amendments first? Any amendments? Anyone has the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 24th?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Fantastic. Item D, public comments. They're in general public comments. You're welcome to step forward. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Seeing none, do we want to look if we have any call-in comments?
Yep. And I'll just give it a moment. There's often a delay with the stream. Okay, no call-in comments.
Thanks, Nolan. Last item E here, board member comments. Do we have any board member comments? Okay, hearing none. We're on to new business. I'm going to recuse myself from new business item 1 related to 1617 North Drake. Matt.
All right. We'll start first with if there's any public comment specific to this agenda item. You can come forward. All right, I see none. Nolan, you got anything on the phones?
We'll see here. Give it a second. No calling comments.
All right, thanks, Nolan. Can you provide a little bit of background for the new business item?
Yeah, so this is the 1617 North Drake Road Youth Sports Complex project. This is phase 1 is what we're calling it. It's focused on clearing, woodland clearing as it relates to the project. You would have seen this project back in December at the special meeting when they were looking for recommendations for variances to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Those 2 variances that they were looking at was granting a variance from the protected slopes and slope setback NFP standards within the project limits, as well as a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant a variance from the woodland standard to preserve 13.5% of the existing woodland on site when 25% is the minimum preservation requirement, conditioned upon keeping as much of the remaining green space and undeveloped area as possible and replanting using native species. So that went to the Zoning Board of Appeals in January, and they voted to grant the slope and slope setback standard variance, but not the woodland variance as recommended. So that prompted the applicants to take a look at updating the project itself to meet the woodland preservation standard, which they are doing. So they are, they adjusted the property boundary to facilitate both stormwater with a natural retention area that's a depression, and that expansion also increased the amount of woodland. So the impacted woodland itself meets the preservation requirement. They're proposing to leave 27.2% of the woodland on site. There was also some efforts to move the building footprint further to the west, closer to the parcel boundary and 131. And what that did is also moved some of the parking area to the west and keep, as you see in some of the concept drawings, there's a large sort of circular oval area that is going to be remaining woodland as a part of that preservation. That's kind of to the east of the parking lot itself. I noted here there's no significant water resources on site or wetlands on site that have been found. There were the protected slopes, but there was the variance that moved forward, so those will be impacted for the project. And then there was also, at the time, it wasn't available, but the applicants did complete an MNFI rare species review with the MSU extension, and also had someone do a bat assessment, habitat assessment for the woodland area on site. That was done through ASTI. So that is kind of the extent of the project itself. This phase is really focused on, again, the woodland clearing, and that was kind of driven a bit by some of the responses in the MNFI MSU extension letter and some questions the applicant had around potential bat habitat on site. So there's been a want to split the site plan review process into two phases. The second phase is one that you would see again as a board later on, and that would focus more on like the building footprint, the parking lot, landscaping, basically everything else. The plan sheets that were provided show where their woodland protection fencing will be for the woodland preserved areas, as well as the soil erosion, soil control, silt fencing. So those are combined on one sheet, and that red hatched area is kind of the areas of impact proposed for the woodlands on site. Right now, with this phase one, staff are recommending the NFP review board approve this phase one site plan with the following conditions. One, no work begins until full site plan review approval, and that's connected to just this phase one aspect. So they will be going to the site plan review committee on April 1st for review. If required, it's not required at this time, but if any copies in the future of state or federal permits are required, we would want those on file. Making sure the tree protection fencing is in place prior to work beginning. And then a fourth condition is that staff had reviewed this site and taken a look at Chapter 50, 6.2-L in the NFP zoning ordinance, which is related to bonding of projects, and feel that this site should include a condition for creation of a bond, the type and amount to be established by city staff. And staff believes that this is, remains consistent with other large projects where this type of impact is a part of the process, as well as staying consistent with the intent of the NFP. And just due to the fact that this project is really split into these two phases right now, one phase being focused on the woodland impacts, when the outlier is that phase two So if there were any potential delays in the project moving forward or anything like that, but if woodland clearing had happened, the bond would be basically a way to either, replant or, basically a way to restore a site if needed. But this was something brought forward by staff as something for the NFP board to consider as a condition, and is recommended right now as an additional condition listed. So with that, I'm gonna invite the applicant up to speak to the project, and we have the PowerPoint ready. So whenever you'd like to come up, speak to it.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kurt Ardema. I work for AVB. I'm here representing Westgate 131 LLC, the applicant for today. And sorry to take up more of your time. I know we were here in December, and we'll probably be back again in May with the phase 2 of this site plan review. We have started this process as in an effort. I think Nolan did a nice job of summarizing where we've been throughout the project so far. And we're trying to be as sensitive as possible to the NFP standards, and that's why we're here, have broken this up into a phase 1 and a phase 2 approach. Thank you. Oh, we got a turn. Thank you. So I just wanted to differentiate for a minute the difference between phase 1 and phase 2. And again, I think Nolan's done a nice job of this already, but phase 1 is essentially just the tree portion of the project. The tree portion is you'll see it on the next slide when we get to that. But just the tree removal portion, we're in response to the MNFI report. We're trying to be, again, responsible in moving earlier in the season to the tree removals, which is why it's broken up into 2 parts. The second part will be, and what you see there is a glimpse at the site plan as it's in review right now and in design right now. As Nolan mentioned, we've made a number of modifications since we were here in December. We have protected one of the large slopes on the east end of the site, wrapping the roadway around there and leaving those trees preserved as well. We've also left a nice large tree buffer on the north parcel boundary. And the way we were able to achieve some of these goals related to the tree preservation amounts is through additional property acquisition as well. And so you see the additional property that's been acquired on a natural low spot that was already cleared of trees. And so that is where the pond has gone to. That pond has come out of the original 20-acre site and moved onto that land to the east. So now we're back in compliance with the 75% through that acquisition process. And again, the phase 2 will be back with native plantings. We know that's a goal from this board. That's a goal for our team as well. We'll also be back with stormwater details and information related to the slopes, the final site plan for that, and any other landscape details that might be in the package as well. We'll also have more details on the building at that time. Design continues with Tower Pinkster leading the design process for that. Hurley and Stewart is our civil engineer. And we expect to be back likely in April, so your next meeting. So again, apologize for the back-to-back meetings. Next slide, please, Nolan. Thank you. So our phase 1 site plan application, as I mentioned, limited to tree removal only. This meets the NFP requirements. The percentage that we're in now, we have, again, made that adjustment through acquisition. We're not doing any new construction with this phase of work. The MNFI report, as Nolan alluded to, identified potential for limited bat habitat, and so we commissioned ASTI to come in and had a bat habitat expert walk the site with us. They were there a couple of weeks ago on site, touring the site. They identified 9 potential trees that had health issues with them, and that's what was creating the potential bat habitat: loose bark, split limbs. And so we've worked with the city process in removal of those 9 specific trees that were in poor health and potential for bat habitat. To be safe and to be safer, we're here today to work on removing the rest, just in case there's potential for bats to be there as well. So trying to be as proactive as we can be and keep this application simple. I think we've got another slide, Nolan. If you don't mind. So this is the boundary. We do have the limits already staked out on the site. All the tree fencing protection will be in place as well. We will have soil erosion permit as well at that time when we start work. And you can see the red there marks the areas that we're intending to cut for this project, and the white areas will all be preserved. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder of the site location. We're on the extreme northwest corner of the city of Kalamazoo city limits. This is a piece of land that was annexed in the 1960s. We actually had a chance to meet one of the neighbors that's lived in this area since the 1940s, and he shared some history of the site, kind of the background of how it ended up in the city of Kalamazoo. A cemetery was started there, and the cemetery work stalled out at some point. Land was acquired by the group that now composes the Westgate 131 LLC entity back in 2003, so about 23 years ago. And then the NFP overlay was added in 2021. Next slide, please. And here's just another visual of the site adjacent to 131. There's also high-capacity power lines immediately west of the site as well. And we think when you see the Phase 2 plan, you'll see the building's been pushed all the way over to that western edge. That's a lower point on the site, so it reduces the impact of that building visually, but it also keeps it closer to the existing, I'll call commercial development with power lines and the highway next door. I think that's it, Olin. Yep, happy to take questions if there's any questions. And if you don't have them now, I'm happy to come back up as well.
Thank you. I got a couple questions here.
Sure, yeah.
Just to orient myself here, just on the southeast corner of the parcel, the roundabout there, is that the present day cul-de-sac of?
It's not. Actually, this is a new roundabout, so we're working, this is a...
Well, is it in roughly the same location, or is it? I'm just
that roundabout is actually south of this drawing, so
okay.
This is north of that existing cul-de-sac that's there now. That's not on this sketch. You will see that in your next Phase 2 review. But if you go back, maybe go to the overall aerial map, might be able to show it there, maybe back one. I guess it's a real high-level view, but where that cul-de-sac ends is actually, if you can see the development pattern where it ends and there's vacant land to the north, so south of the city limits.
Okay.
That's where the cul-de-sac is now, roughly where that.
Oh, I see it now. Actually.
Yeah, there's a senior living home there, and there's also some apartments that are there. That cul-de-sac is in that location. So we'll be doing a roadway extension with the Road Commission. It's actually in Oshtemo Township, so the road actually goes through the Road Commission process. We were just at the Road Commission offices an hour ago working with them as well. We now have an approved plan for that road. The roundabouts came through collaborative discussions with the city, the township, and the Road Commission to have a road that wasn't just a racetrack straight north-south road. It would have those roundabouts to help soften the pedestrian impact as well.
Thank you.
So the roundabout that's shown on that sketch is the conceptual plan right now as approved by the Road Commission. It'll go to the township next for review for the road piece. Not many projects cross jurisdictional boundaries like this, at least that I've been a part of. So it's relatively unique to have these kind of segmented elements. But I will say the city staff's been great in meeting with our team since the end of October. We've had every other week meetings with the city, the township, the Road Commission, MDOT, Consumers Energy, everybody involved in this project to make sure everybody understands what the vision is, the program is, and we've been able to refine the project on several fronts that have made it really a stronger project. And one of those was with this board, the NFP, back in December.
So the dark blue shapes are where stormwater retention is going to be
Proposed
directed?
stormwater, yes, correct.
Including in the northwest corner, there's a smaller piece there, is that right?
Yeah, that's intended to service the building, so the building footprint itself will have stormwater there so as not to pipe across the entire site with that stormwater. The rest of the site will drain into the pond to the east. And we'll have all those details at the Phase 2 review.
Cool. Via that crooked lighter
Yeah,
blue
that-
thing, that the kind of the concept?
Correct, yeah, that little section that we need to clear because we'll be
Yeah.
putting pipe in that section, yeah, right,
with
that
pipe,
little
with
sliver
actual
that comes
pipe.
out there.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
We're trying to respect the natural grade that's on the site a bit as well with that, and so that was the natural low spot, which is why it's that kind of flagpole that jumps over to that low spot versus having to regrade and remove all the trees on the rest of the site.
I might have missed it. What would kind of be like your ideal timeline for the removal of the trees?
So we are intending to be at site plan review on April 1st. So we've worked with the city on getting that site plan review meeting scheduled for this Phase 1 application. And then the intention is that work would start soon after that site plan review process, assuming there's an approval granted for that. The goal is to work as quickly as possible to, again, respect the seasonal changes that are upcoming and out of the potential for bat habitat to exist on the site. And again, we've identified those 9 trees through the bat habitat expert. Those in particular have been removed through a maintenance effort with the city of Kalamazoo. But the rest of it, we, from our standpoint, our consultant has advised that just out of pure safety and an abundance of caution to work quickly, and so that's why we split this apart and hope to start work in early April.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be savvy, considering like the bats as well as getting into oak wilt risk season.
Sure.
Which I think is like April through June highest.
Yeah, we're getting right on it.
Yeah.
But that would be specifically if there was pruning to do. If you're doing a removal, as long as the stump is either painted or pulled or ground out to reduce possibility of being infected.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So if you're familiar with oak wilt or not,
I'm not an expert in that, no.
it's a vascular disease.
Yeah.
It affects primarily red oaks or oaks in the red oak family.
Sure.
And it is transmitted by a native beetle that carries the fungus on it. So that beetle predates on the tree, infects the tree with oak wilt. So if the tree is being retained but needs to have pruning done, pruning during growing season is not permitted because that is when the beetles are flying and the spread. And then once oak wilt is infected into a tree, you can't get rid of it, and it can spread very quickly to root grafted adjacent trees. But
appreciate
again,
the heads up.
if you're doing a removal, it's that's okay. But if the stump is being left, it needs to be either painted so that it minimizes the chance of the beetle coming and infecting. Even the stump can be infected because the root systems will still remain alive and can still spread the disease via root grafts. But if the stump is ground or pulled out of the ground, then it's okay.
It's safe, yeah. Our intention is that the stumps would come out as well.
Okay.
And so once soil erosion is in place, then the stumps would come out as well.
Yeah,
So-
like even a periphery stump that's, the tree needs to come down,
Sure.
but the stump might not need to, like that needs to be considered because once oak wilt gets in a site, it'll just keep spreading.
Well, and I'll look at our project manager too and just, advise, we've got a tree consultant on board as well, and we'll be sure to address that with them as the project gets started. So
Yeah.
appreciate the heads up.
And from experience last summer, the previous years Kalamazoo hasn't seen a lot of oak wilt, but last year we saw a huge uptick in oak wilt cases due to the spring storm that we had.
Sure, yeah.
And so now oak wilt is, you can find it in almost every corner of the city at the moment.
Well, our intention is to move quickly to avoid that growing season. So I think our schedule right now is roughly 10 days of work once work begins. So we should be done, ideally, if all goes as planned, by mid-April.
Okay.
But we'll be sure to respect that as well. So thank you.
And I think there was I believe a woodlot description was provided, should be in your packet. Kind of gives you a general species breakdown, understory, overstory.
Yeah, that's what Lori Davis is here from Hurley and Stewart. And Lori, I don't know if you want to address any of that, but we did do,
Yeah,
Very much.
the majority of the site is sugar maple. There are a few individual, very small oak trees, so to remove them and their root system shouldn't be a problem at all. Nothing, no large oak trees.
Thank you.
thanks, Lori.
Yep, and I'll speak real quick too. Kurt had mentioned, yeah, there were 9 essentially dead trees on site, and staff had reviewed that with the NFP ordinance and making sure if that was something, maintenance type activity that, did it require more official approval, or was it something that could be done by right? And it was determined it could be done by right as maintenance activity. So the applicant did provide that bat report and some pictures of those trees and locations. So we have that information documented, and yeah, I just wanted to speak to that as well. So those were done as regular maintenance.
Thanks, Nolan.
I got a couple more here.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
To speak about the water drainage there off the east,
Sure.
no work needs to be done in there. I don't see either because there's currently not marked as tree removals being needed there.
Yeah, no, there isn't tree removal there. That area was opened up, that low spot, back in 2018, I believe, is when that occurred. So actually before NFP was in place, through a different process, that section, and I believe if I remember right, it's been a low spot with minimal trees for a number of years.
Okay.
So it is, yeah, we don't intend, there's not significant growth on that low spot.
I assume, though, there will be significant work that needs to be done in that area to prepare it for the drainage that's going to be.
We'll be preparing it for stormwater, correct? But it's naturally low already, so we anticipate there'll be some level of grading there, but we will be back with phase 2 with details on that.
Okay, so we'll see more details on that.
You'll
next
see a lot of
phase.
details on that and the
Okay.
other storm pond when you
Okay,
get to
'cause there's
phase
also-
2.
Yeah, sorry, I was.
Yeah. No, good question. No, we'll certainly be back with details on that.
Okay,
This piece is trees only at this point.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and on the sheet with that red hatched area is the area of impact. The yellow line is the tree protection fencing, and the spec is shown, I believe, on that civil drawing. And then also the blue is the soil erosion, soil control, which also has the silt fence specs are included as well.
We're excited about that steeper slope section too when you come in, that we think it's going to be a very nice natural entrance to the development. So again, appreciate the comments at this meeting that helped us get to that point in making that adjustment.
I'll keep going if no one else has anything.
Sure.
Just a comment and question about the driveway entrance. So we've got one coming off to the west of the roundabout and to the north of the roundabout, both leading to the parking lot.
Yep.
Is it possible to only use the one to the west, eliminating the one to the north and having to cut through the forest and the slopes? Is that, I don't know if there's fire code regulations or whatnot.
There's a two-pronged answer to that. So a good question, and we did take a look at that as well. The reason that is drawn there is twofold. One is that for site circulation and flow for the future development, which will be addressed in the phase 2 application, as cars drop off, inevitably probably a lot of kids in their cars coming around and accessing the facility where the drop-off lane aligns with the proper drive aisle. So in other words, wrapping around the site, doing a drop-off, and then exiting out to the west. The west exit that you see exiting out to the east through that, I think you mentioned the west exit, the one that goes due west, that's a one-way exit is the way it's intended right now. So for traffic flow purposes, that exit would be one way and the site would circulate where cars would enter up to the north, wrap around, do drop-offs, park, and then exit out to in that southeast corner. The second reason for that road is Oshtemo Township has expressed a desire to potentially connect this area farther north in the future. and they would like the ability to have potential for that roadway to be extended north. That's not a project we're working on right now, but if that occurred, theoretically, it could come off of somewhere on the north parking lot. If it did occur, they would be back in front of this board and the site plan review committee as well. But the township is interested in that potential northerly connection. So that's the kind of two-pronged reason why that driveway is there, is one, site circulation, and two, potential for that roadway to continue to the north in the future, as it does connect down to Maple Hill Drive, which is signalized at West Main. So they'd like to theoretically bring that up to H Avenue in the future. Our group isn't involved in the land north of here in the township, but the township's working with that landowner right now on some ideas and concepts. Likely it would be several years down the road, if at all, but they would like to have that potential preserved for that to occur.
And the road around the building is the fire access lane, which would be inaccessible to just someone who's coming to that structure. It's just strictly for, it might be used, I guess, for maintenance activities, but beyond that, it's strictly a fire access lane. So that's...
Yeah, that's a code requirement. So fire access lane, clearly it requires more tree removal, but it's part of this fire safety component with site plan review process. We think we've been able to pull as much in terms of infrastructure out of the space as possible. We also, as of an hour ago, have an agreement with the County Road Commission to park cars along the future Maple Hill Drive, and so that also helps to reduce the footprint of the parking lot by being able to park cars along Maple Hill Drive. So instead of planning for that peak weekend where all the parking needs to be on site, we've been able to push some of that down on the roadway on Maple Hill Drive. So we think we've got a balance there. And typically the Road Commission does not allow on-street parking, but now has recently done that. So we've shrunk the lot as much as we possibly can from a market standpoint, and then allowed overflow onto the roadway with Road Commission permission.
Going back to the northern entrance there that may someday, maybe not, be connected by Ashimo, I would presume that the driveway would then have to be enlarged if it was then turned into a connector road?
We have confirmed with the Road Commission that the width that is being designed is a width that they would approve. So it would not have to be widened. So what's being built here, which is a simple 2-lane roadway, is what they would approve.
Okay, thanks.
Good question, though. We asked the same question. Just want to make sure we're not going to end up with a massive roadway going through there. Yeah, yep. Hate to spend all the time trying to get this scenic tree line road and then have it be widened out to be wider than anticipated.
Any more comments or questions from the board?
I'll say thank you. Thanks for the collaboration. I think between the city, Road Commission, Township, MDOT, really excited about where this is headed, and even the ability to do this Phase 1 application has helped make the project better. So thank you.
Board need a few minutes? Are we ready to make a motion? I see folks still looking. I'll give them a couple more minutes here. I have one additional question, actually, regarding I guess it would be the eastern edge of where the clearing is going to be. I'm just curious as to if there's going to be a retaining wall built. It looks like, based on the contour lines, it's relatively steep. So where that cut's going to be made for the parking lot, how will that transition to the to the woodlot?
A good question. We will have all of that in our Phase 2 application, but Lori, I don't know if you're able to address that now on a preliminary basis?
You mean on the east side of the parking lot?
Correct. And if you could
kinda-
also, do you know what the height difference is going to be from parking lot to
Yeah,
woodlot?
it's sort of a half and half situation. So the bottom half of the parking lot is going to grade up to the existing slope, and then the north half of it is going to grade down to the existing slope. So we've kind of split the difference between where that surface is, because there's a 41-foot grade
Right.
change between the high point and the low point on the site. And we've kept the grades at a minimum. I think they're 1-on-3 right now, to try to save as many trees as possible. And then Laura will be designing a aggressive restoration situation in both cases.
So I guess currently we're not 100% sure how that's going to look.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if there's going to be a large cut on the east side of the parking lot and then, a
it's
big
grading
height
out.
difference.
In the north half, it's grading down at a 1-on-3 to catch up to grade.
So
And
that'll make up a lot of the difference,
Yep,
the
and then
lot
on the
itself.
south,
Okay,
it's grading up at a 1-on-3.
okay,
And then you can see where the green kind of touches in. That's
Right.
where it meets the existing grade. So north of that, it'll be a slope down, and south of that, it's a slope up.
To clarify too, the more teal colored green is what's being graded, correct?
Yeah,
And
that's the disturbed site.
the brighter Kelly green color is the
Retained
preserved
trees,
trees.
yep.
So there is some gap there between the improvements, the infrastructure, and the preserved trees as well.
Yeah.
thank you.
If we're through with discussion, I'll make a motion, but I don't know if we're there. Okay.
I don't have any more questions.
I'd like to make a motion that the Natural Features Protection Board approve the Phase 1 site plan for the Westgate Sports Complex project at 1670 Drake Road with the following conditions. No work to begin until full site plan review approval. If required, a copy of any required permit obtained from a state or federal agency must be submitted to the city. Tree protection fencing is in place prior to work beginning. Creation of a bond for the project, the type and amount to be established by city staff, which remains consistent with other projects, consistent with city commitment to an intent of NFP ordinance. Due to project being split into 2 phases. Is that it, Nolan?
I think you got it all.
Those are the conditions, yep.
The long one.
Support. Second.
Support. All right, any final discussion from the board? Any comments? All right. Nolan, can you do a roll call?
Yes. Hollander?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Stemple?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Bassett?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, you just pull it. Yep. Thanks.
All right, we can move on to new business item number 2, NFP board member application recommendation. There's an opportunity to provide public comments specific to this agenda item. Are there any in-person public comments? One person. Any phone call-in, online, et cetera?
Let me see. And I'll just give it a second if they're with the delay. So no public comments.
All right, thanks. Do you want to give some background on the site?
Yeah, I'll give some brief background and then open it up to the board members who were on the nominating subcommittee. And I'll also open it up to the applicant if they want to come up and give some words. But yeah, so we have had, technically have had an open seat since March of last year that we've been trying to fill diligently. It's Director Martin's seat. Luckily, we have enough flexibility in our bylaws that someone can continue serving so that we don't lose the ability to conduct proper board action during that time while we try to fill that seat. We were fortunate enough that someone was interested and wanted to give it a shot and be, put their name in and apply. So that's what we had. We had an applicant come in with an architectural background, and they're qualified, I believe, to be on the NFP board. I'll open it up to the nominating subcommittee folks, though, to give any of their feedback to the board.
Sure, yeah. Yes, highly qualified and welcome your expertise on the board. I think in particular, the applicant brings a nuanced understanding of, the full process of building development that's similar but complementary to Director Hollander. So I think it'll be a really positive synergy there. So lots to talk about building envelopes, which I know nothing. So, and that's often something that I stare at on plans and try to use my limited knowledge to understand. So I think I'm looking forward to having that added expertise.
Yeah, I think a really strong candidate, good kind of architecture background, but also interested in native plants and that kind of stuff, as well as I think sustainability manager at her company. So really good, diverse kind of a candidate that I think would be a great fit.
Yeah, didn't know. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to kind of echo the other two there and just say I was on the call briefly and then got booted off and couldn't get back on. But what I heard and did sound like a great fit, just someone with the experience that they have and also the interest in plants and the natural world, kind of a seemingly a unique kind of crossroads there that I think would work well on the board.
Yeah, I didn't know if the applicant wanted to come up and speak to anything, if they'd like. You don't have to, I'm not.
It's awkward to be so far away from the podium, so. No, I don't, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm just grateful for the consideration and happy to serve.
And you might have to speak closer to the mic just a little bit.
For the recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to take any questions.
It's a little uncomfortable, but.
It is.
Where do you currently work?
I work at Eckert Wardell, right downtown.
Excellent. Just curious, I didn't get a sit-in, so ask all the easy questions.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just finish by saying I think this keeps the board in a really well-rounded state. I mean, we've always had enough people with the right background to fill the seats that we need to fill, but I think it hasn't been since maybe the original board where there was more of like an even split between the development world and community and the biology and biological sciences, and I think this will help just balance that a little bit more, especially since we have some folks who are like a bridge between both worlds, like Director Frederickson with landscape architecture. So it was really kind of a great pleasure getting to know Sarah and why they want to serve on the board, and I think it's a good fit.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'm going to make a motion to approve a recommendation to the City Commission for the appointment of Sarah Munchow to the NFP Board for a full term of 3 years.
Support.
All right. Any final discussion items?
Oh, sorry, jumped the gun.
All right. Want to call a roll?
Yeah. Hollander,
Yes.
Frederickson,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Stemple,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bassett.
Yes.
Awesome. So how this works, kind of moving forward, is we'll move this recommendation to a city commission agenda where they will be the ones to kind of make the final vote for that appointment. That sometimes can happen in batches. We have lots of people that move forward onto different boards and commissions. So we'll see if that makes it to one of the upcoming April agendas for city commission. Director Martin might not be with us, and by that I mean on the board for the next NFP meeting, but he may have to serve one final meeting with us. But I think I want to take this time too to just give him a lot of kudos and being one of the original board members, helping get this off the ground and make it something pretty unique for the city of Kalamazoo that can kind of lead by example. Definitely, 7 years of service is nothing to scoff at when it comes to boards and commissions, especially one that can be contentious at times. But I think, definitely found your voice a lot too as the chair, and I think you grew a lot in that role. And so, yeah, I just want to echo just really appreciative of your time and effort on the board, and want to shout that from the mountaintop, I guess, here in City Hall. But yeah, I think it'll be a good transition, and we can finally kind of let you off the hook a little bit. But hopefully you stop by or listen in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for the kind words. It's been a pleasure to be on the boards and kind of see it evolve over the years and see lots of good work done. And I know, the board and the city's in good hands with the current board and the future members. So, yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. It looks like item G, unfinished business. We don't have anything. Item H, staff reports and updates, NFP workstation session. Nolan, you want to provide some background on this item?
Yeah, so there's some slides in your packet. Some of it's a bit of a replay from the previous meeting. One thing we didn't get to address though, and that I wanted to get to, was the NFP guide. So in the agenda packet was actually the current version of it. It's still kind of rough around the edges. But one of the things I wanted to accomplish from today's work session was to maybe assign or get some interested NFP board members to just take a look at certain sections of that guide so that you don't have to review the whole document, but we can come back together maybe with some edits for the future. And I wanted to kind of open it up. We've had lots of discussions about it, about resources to add, and I've been trying to document those and add those where I can. But I want to try and make it, kind of as polished as I can so that it's not too much, but it's just enough. just the right amount of technical and layman, right, which is kind of a fine balance. And if you look at it as it stands right now, there's not certain things in the beginning haven't changed a whole lot, but there are some things like the development process, which has kind of gotten a little more standardized, and that will be something I need to review internally with staff just to make sure is all set, as well as pointing people to where our GIS resource is, because we have a lot of information there that people can look at. So examples like our aerial imagery that we host on that site is very fine grained, so better than probably what you'll see most of the time on just like a Google map aerial view. So the resolution's pretty good, which helps if you're someone who's maybe not familiar with using that type of tool, or to look at your property from an aerial view. But it also has things like water resources. I think we have wetlands on there, general parcel boundary lines. It also has an NFP layer, so you can click on that layer like it shows, and it just gives you a pop-up of, hey, MNFI, yes or no, and then what the primary, secondary, and tertiary natural features are, which is really helpful, but I think a lot of people don't realize it's there sometimes. So pointing to that, also pointing to where to get to the ordinance, which can be a challenge, right? Where do I even go for that? It's not hidden online. You can find it if you search just a little bit, but this makes it a little easier, right? There's a link right there. You click on it, you go to the ordinance. And the nice part about that is that anytime in the future, if we make updates to it, right, it should just kind of still land generally on that page. So updates should kind of be reflective over time. And it also kind of just briefly, you know, I have the graphic here to kind of show what the heck an overlay district is, because you say that and it's a mouthful and people are like glossy-eyed, I don't know what that is. The supplemental application is also included, just as an example. That's something we could also look at and maybe potentially update if we need to. You know, it's been updated, small tweaks in the past, but that's mostly just been when, like, Jamie transitioned away from the liaison position and I did, so it just updated things like contact information. But also just calling out this box in particular in red. This is a part of the application that a lot of people don't necessarily see or read clearly, so letting them know the situation of like when they need to provide extra detail for an application. So a good example of this is like, usually if work is just within the interior of a structure, so I mentioned like Growler Stadium as an example, they aren't really going to be showing a full site plan like documentation that shows all the natural features on site. So this helps us document like, okay, they're saying, yes, it's just the interior work. We'll have the first page of the application completed so we can track that. But they don't need to they don't need to fill out and do all of section 2, which is way more in depth, right? I'll also go over quite a bit like what the NFP fee is, and even that I think I need to update because I think it's $115 now and not $110. We have fee structure at the city that gets updated every once in a while. That was kind of the minimum update that I wanted to see for NFP. It's like probably the least amount we could update it. I think it's a reasonable amount. And then the timelines and deadlines for when people should get application materials in. That can be really tricky sometimes, especially if we're looking at like a project that's coming forward for a variance, because our meeting happens and then almost like a day later, if they're going to go to ZBA the next month, the notice has to go out like the next day. So there are some tight windows, and we try to ask that people get stuff in sooner rather than later, as you'd expect. But providing that so people kind of know how to map out and plan. Also, the meeting schedule and where you can find other meetings that are on on the city's website. So linking that calendar here. Providing that general calendar as like an example of when stuff gets turned in. Board meeting preparation, this is kind of a surprising one, but some of the board members know. There have been certain situations where there hasn't been maybe enough prep, and so this lets people know what to maybe consider bringing to be prepared, also where to park, where City Hall is located. And this might actually need to be updated because my department is probably going to be moving locations in the near future, and there'll be another much larger meeting space, and the NFP meetings might move from this space to that space. And so in that case, this would be updated. But for now, City Hall, right, third floor, in the commission chambers. And then I provide a example meeting to go watch for an applicant that was very well prepared. So just as an example of like, here's how you would come prepared. And then going into kind of some detail on the development standards. And one of the big things I worked on was just linking everything again, so that it's a little easier. Like if I only am interested in landscaping right now, I can just click that link and go, right? And it should just go to the landscaping section. But then within the document, it kind of goes into a deeper dive, right? So again, referencing the GIS and showing kind of an example like, oh, there's the water features layer. That's what you would click to turn that on the map, right? So you could generally take a look. And so going through that, like with wetlands, we talked about external resources. So in this case, referencing the Michigan Eagle Wetland Map Viewer as a good place to look as well. So linking to that. Generally linking to Eagle for any consultants, because they keep that consultant list. So who is qualified at the state to do some of this. Some of this information could maybe be adjusted. This is just as an example, but like types of wetland, what is, a lot of people might not even, they could look at one and say that is a wetland, but what type of wetland is it? These are some of the areas where maybe my minor in biology, I might need some professional biologists to kind of help out with finding a better graphic or something, but so same thing, wetlands. State and federal permits is another one, right, where people can get some hiccups. If you're new to this, if you're a small developer, maybe you're just a resident, you might not know, right? And I like this graphic because it shows kind of at a glance where some of these permits, what they are and what they apply to. And then I also have links to some of the three that we probably would see the most for some of these projects, as well as where some of the water resources divisions are. So I'm talking too much, but this is kind of the track I've been going down, is just grabbing and putting more detail into the document. And so I'm hoping that we can maybe get some interest from NFP board members who want to like take a look at certain sections. Doesn't necessarily, you can make it a challenge, and it doesn't necessarily need to be your area of expertise if you want to make it challenge. But like with woodland and protected trees, right? Those sections and any resources available, it might be a good check for Director Stempel to assist with that, right? Just given your level of expertise and background in those areas. Doesn't mean you could look at the whole document too, but yeah, so open it up to discussion. It's definitely, this has been going on a while, and I've tried my best to work on it when I've been able to. So.
No, I can see the progress compared to what we started with. It's looking really good, and I like the overview so people can understand where they're going and then get into the details. And you've incorporated a lot of the things we've talked about already with the making it easier to find consultants and resources and understanding bigger items that smaller developers may not be aware of,
Yep.
permitting and what have you. So it's looking good.
Well, one of the things too is the MNFI review, right? The state of Michigan has a, endangered wildlife biologist that a lot of people don't know their contact information, but they also keep a list of people that have the ability, they have the permit required to actually do that type of review, which can be really helpful,
Yep.
right? Can you come take a look at my site or my property, to assess it, right? That takes a little more, there's a little more specialty there. So stuff like that is helpful. And some of the larger developers also had been excited when we talked about this, I think a year or so ago. We had like a little developer summit and had some some of the bigger, we invited a lot of different firms. And yeah, there were some seasoned, staff from those firms that were like, oh, this is pretty neat. I would use this a lot. So it's to speak to everybody. And I think it'll also save a lot of time.
It can be overwhelming trying to find a consultant for something you've done maybe never, or like once in a blue moon, and they're so specific and niche, so I think it's going to be super helpful for people.
Even like an arborist, right? A certified arborist.
Honestly, yes.
There's not many of us around.
That's the thing, yeah. So how do we help point, give people a compass and point it kind of in the right, it's kind of the idea, yeah, so.
I found my first application to this body to be very frustrating, and I think this would have made it a lot easier for me, so
Yeah,
nice work.
yeah, hindsight. It's,
You didn't pull up the development process slide, but I've gone back and forth on that one ever since I first saw it. I think the logic is good on the slide. I'm a little, it bothers me a little bit that it's the development process, because it's not actually the development process from a developer's perspective, it's the entitlements process. And I think it may give a false sense to particularly inexperienced developers of what steps are involved in developing a project. And it could give the wrong impression that if I can just get through this process, then that's not the case.
right, yeah.
I don't know how to reconcile that, because I know that from the city's perspective, this is the development process, but it's part of it's inside of a larger process that any developer has to go through. And our ability, I think the purpose of me being on the board and somebody in my position being on the board at all times is to remind us that, this is not the totality of the process, and there are other regulatory and financial and business concerns that impact all of the decisions that we're making and that our process has to be able to interface with. So that's just some kind of general feedback. Like, on one hand, I think this is really well laid out, and I think it's a beautifully crafted slide and image that has a ton of difficult information and maps out a process that is very frustrating for a lot of people. So I think the slide itself is really good. It's just that the title is a little bit problematic for me. The other thing is, I think sometimes we're going to encounter applicants who take a DIY approach when they shouldn't, and the quality of the presentation and the materials that they submit suffers as a result of them not knowing what they don't know. And so I don't know how to approach that either. I don't know if it makes sense to include like a sample budget for this process, naming some of the different consultants that one might work with to be able to answer these questions that we're asking, because it really is a waste of an applicant's time for them to think that they can answer questions that they're unqualified to answer. And I know that there's always a special case out there of somebody who's brilliant and can wear an arborist hat and a water resources hat and development hat all at the same time, but I've met very few people like that in my life. So giving people the expectation that this is going to cost some money on the front end is helping them out in a way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like the idea of changing the title of this away from development process, or maybe adding, thought I had was maybe adding a disclaimer as well. Like, this is very, like, every project is pretty case by case. There's an overarching procedural thing that happens, but every project, and you guys know this as a board, but every project has its own things happening. You could have a project that's got, thinking like brownfield redevelopment as a part of it, or the variance process, or maybe there's a neighborhood enterprise zone aspect to it. There's so many other pieces that kind of they kind of elbow their way into this in weird ways sometimes. And so this is very general to just, I mean, it's hard to lay this out. You know, I can't even tell you how many hours I stared at this to try and just make it make sense on a very broad level. So I think a disclaimer could help, right? This is just very broad. This is just very, like, to just give a sense of how it could look, just very high level. But it could be a good idea too, like you said, to provide some, like, maybe with the examples, because I did put some example projects in, but like, what are some, where do I find fees? What does some of this look like? What could a total cost maybe potentially be based on a project type? Again, with a disclaimer of like, everything is case by case. This does not necessarily apply directly to your, because I get where you're coming from. We don't want to apply all this like too literally and give the wrong impression when it is some of it is a little abstract. So.
It's almost like the meeting prep slide, but it's almost before that when they're like choosing a site, like where can they quickly at the beginning understand, like if I pick this, what are the implications, not just prepping for the meeting, but the step before that.
Yeah, well, NFP is solidly in that kind of site plan review area. The board is. I'm living kind of in all three zones. And there is kind of some heavy lifting going on with the pre-development stuff a lot of the times, which is, everybody in our department talks to each other to ensure that we're moving forward the correct way. So that involves like Pete for zoning, sometimes a deputy director for zoning, 2 planners for site plan review and how this, so we do talk a lot to try and make sure this is all clear. And so this was based on a snapshot in time, so I'll even have to probably go back to them and be like, hey, Emily, is like this still accurate? At least at a very high level, am I missing anything? But it is hard. It is all very case by case. It's like no 2 projects are the same. They're similar elements, but they're all like a unique fingerprint, which makes this work, interesting, but also difficult. But those are good suggestions. I've got those written down so I can change those. Yeah, that was probably, it was easy to lay out the standards, right, and find resources for that. That's like a research project. This part of it was like racking my brain, trying to make it work in a cohesive way.
My literal brain, my literal thinking brain sees a dead end in the pre-development phase. The continue to work with development administrator until ready. There's no way out.
That's not true.
Feels that way sometimes.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I understand that you're working with that. It looks like you just kind of stay there. What do you do when you're ready? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's, there should be another connection there to make it clear. But that's good. I mean, when you look at something long enough, there are things that blur out of the way. Yeah, and it's very iterative, each one. Like, pre-development can take some time because there is some, not wheel spinning, but there's some back and forth and understanding, and site plan review again, right? Even after the board gives an approval for a project, as an example, it goes to site plan review and there can be 5 or 6 revisions. And there's even aspects of a project, like if there's enough revisions that might start impacting the approval for NFP, sometimes it's going to have to come back, right? Because there's enough changes where it triggers and comes back. And so that's kind of an iterative step that's not necessarily captured here. This is like best case scenario, everything goes right. And I think Director Hollander can attest to the fact that not everything goes right.
It does not exist.
Yeah.
That project does not exist.
Does not exist. So there will be iterative steps here, right? Yeah. Even permitting, there's a lot of follow-up, there's a lot of inspections, there's things that happen beyond this scope of this chart. But don't worry, I'll find a way to make sure that's all clear. But I think the disclaimer could help, potential costs, maybe with some of those examples could help. And then changing this title, because I don't want to give the wrong impression.
Question, I'm sure it's in here, I just haven't looked at it in a while. I do see that, professional review recommended. I know that you state, like, in each of these sections, like woodlands is the one I'm looking for, what to expect to be able to answer questions on. Do we ever say you need to have a professional opinion about X, Y, and Z in any of these sections, or do we leave it up to them to?
So it's kind of written into the NFP ordinance.
Okay.
So as an example, let me go up to woodland.
The reason I'm asking is I could definitely send someone down the wrong path thinking they're good to go. And
Right, so here's one. So slope determination. If any area on a parcel appears to meet the slope criteria, one of the following is required. A slope analysis by a professional is not completed and the area is assumed to meet the slope criteria. So the standards would still apply in that case. So that's probably more of like a single family residence where maybe they're not using a slope analysis by a professional, but the standard still applies nonetheless. The other option is a slope analysis shall be completed by a licensed surveyor, licensed professional engineer, or a geologist certified by the American Institute of Professional Geoscientists, following all acceptable practices to determine whether any part of the slope face meets the slope criteria. That one's a mouthful. I think with the woodland and protected tree standard, it leans on an ISA certified arborist or other party basically that has a professional background that meets that. So as an example, like the woodland, sometimes we get like a woodland description or delineation by one of those engineering firms that is either done by like a licensed landscape architect or engineer, someone on staff. But yeah, so it's within the ordinance, that language, yeah. And the problem is,
thank you.
the problem is, like I just said, right, what is the American Institute of Professional Geoscientists? And like, do they have, how do I get a hold of someone who even, it's similar to like arborists, right? There are not a lot of, there are a lot of professional geologists in the world, but in our area or even in our region of like Southwest Michigan, how many are there? So trying to point people to the right resource, even if it means maybe they have to like talk to somebody from Indiana, or maybe just slightly outside our region, which is why I like to point to some of those external resources now that we can. Because it's not really us giving a recommendation, but it's giving the starting line, right? It's kind of like people before were kind of walking in the fog, tripping over stuff and not really sure where they're going. At least now it's like fog parts a little bit and they're at the starting line, so they can at least, for a little while they'll walk, and then as they keep going they'll start to clear more and they can, yeah, bad analogy, but yeah. So, yeah, just overall, if we don't need to like officially assign sections, but if you guys want to take a look at it through your lens of expertise and get back to me, feel free. Just email me individually, or we can come for the next meeting prepared to talk about it some more. The other thing I wanted to talk with everybody before we convene or wrap up. So we talked about this last year. I wasn't able to get it off the ground because I couldn't get staff here. But I wanted to bring it back up, right? There was some interest in like some staff speakers coming to board board meetings, maybe not every one, but maybe we could pick like 4 during the year and plan it out. I know there were some past interests in compliance and stormwater and education, but I wanted to know if there were any other areas that everybody wanted to focus on. I think, we could definitely look and maybe get someone from like the city attorney's office to come and talk through some technical things there. I know Director Bassett had talked about like, well, maybe some training around like how do I balance, being very code-driven, ordinance-driven versus, some of the other elements that can come with a project like social impact and the financial aspects and things like that, balancing that out.
I think it'd be really good to do something on the ethical responsibilities of being on a regulatory board, especially as we're doing a little bit of a transition in terms of board members. That seems like it should happen regularly.
Yep, that's a good one. Any others?
Yeah, I'll agree with that, just because sometimes it's difficult to be sitting here on this side knowing that we're, potentially altering someone's project that they spent a lot of time and money and effort to get just to this point, and then to have them change it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Any others? Good ideas? What my mom used to say, I can find a chore for you to do if you're bored. We can find other topics for sure. And we can also start with what the past interests were too, adding in the ethical training, there might be, I can talk to my supervisor and see if there's any, like maybe some training funding through our department. If we, maybe we could get someone from like MSU Extension to do like a board type training. As an example, they sometimes will do like Robert's Rules of Order and different trainings like that. We often have like our Zoning Board of Appeals members do that because theirs is really, really heavy procedurally driven type of board. Not saying this one isn't, but that one is like kind of outside of the ballpark across the city in some other person's backyard, when we're talking about playing on the same field. And then I think are also probably going to do like another joint board training this year. Not sure if it'll be with ZBA and Planning Commission again. Maybe it'll be with one of our other boards, maybe like ECC or some Environmental Concerns Committee or some other board, but we usually still do the joint board training. So I think those are really good too. For those that were at the one last year, it's just a good chance to get in touch with people that are doing similar volunteer work on other boards and commissions. Get to know each other a little bit. Okay.
Can you make a standalone, send us the updated standalone, the standards document is at the end of this agenda. Can you send it around separately so that we can say, these are the pages that I'm going to look at, and then just so we're talking in the same.
Yeah, I can split the document into its components and share that with folks. So that
it's I don't want to say I'm working on one thing and then end up,
Yep.
You got it.
Hey, Nolan, is the current draft any different than the one you sent out a couple months ago?
Nope.
No?
Nope, this is the most up-to-date draft.
Okay.
I think I had done some work on it back in September, but haven't done anything new with it since then. So this is the most current draft version, yep.
So the edits, I gave you some comments a while back.
You did, I have those.
But they haven't been implemented yet?
Those might be the most recent ones that have been
Okay.
implemented, yep. If they haven't, take a look and, I don't know,
Okay.
send them via messenger pigeon. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we'll make sure that we account for any updates or changes that
Great.
we want to make.
I got one more for you, Nolan, that's slightly related to NFP, but I'm curious as to why the Kalamazoo street tree map no longer exists.
Yeah, so I was just going to go look, so you're talking about Tree Keeper.
I'm not sure what it was, essentially like a GIS,
Yeah.
public access.
I think it was through Davy Resource Group.
Yes.
Did our inventory. I think the license just lapsed, like it wasn't, that was their proprietary sort of GIS program that we probably just didn't pay for a renewal on, but we have the data, so we could look and see if our GIS folks could have it be like a public layer,
Yeah, that would be great.
so that's available. Because that might slot really well into just our GIS. The nice thing with what Davey had though was it did give you some like broad information about like carbon sequestration and the cost of each tree and some of the eco benefits that we probably won't, I don't know how we would recreate, we could do it, but I think just generally having them viewable is a good first step. Yeah, that's a good, because I went to look the other day too, and it's, you're right, it's down. So I think that's just because the license lapsed.
All right, any other comments on this new business or whatever, excuse me, staff reports and updates section? That's where we're at. No? Okay. Communications announcements, any announcements, staff, board members?
May I give just a general announcement? So we had been doing Imagine Kalamazoo master plan meetings in various neighborhoods since late January, early February. We did like 14 or 15 in I think 8 weeks. That was really, really good. Basically, we're in almost every neighborhood. We're just at Western's campus trying to connect a little bit with Western students. And then as an FYI, we'll be doing some downtown related sessions too. So keep an eye out for those. And if you want to drop in and attend, feel free. But work continues. So that's kind of the big update.
Questions might be the wrong spot and you might not know, but do you have an overview of the two-way conversion project where we are in that process and phases? I'm sure it's
Yeah.
on the city website. I just haven't looked.
Yes, it's,
Oh, it was
it's,
at one point.
yeah, I think there's going to be some work that starts this year. It's going to be Kalamazoo Avenue specific. Some work that's happening downtown right now is coordination with Consumers Energy, so they're doing gas work, which is why they're out there right now. Yeah, we're just waiting on some final steps, I think, at the state and federal level to get those projects moving. But they are still moving forward. So I think some of the work is slated to start this year. And as we get more or better confirmation on that, you'll see more information on that. Yeah.
Which might be why it's not there. It sounds like it's transitioning.
Yeah, there's some updating that we need to do. I think we're still getting all that coordinated, but yeah.
It's fair. Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be busy between now and 2030. It's going to be a lot going on.
I do have an announcement, and I hope that everybody got an email from me at some point. April 14th, we're holding a groundbreaking ceremony for the Cal Recovery Project, which this body has approved in one way or another like 4 times. So if you want to come check out a project site for one of the projects that we've looked at, show up. It's at 1:30 p.m. on the 14th.
Okay. Last call. All right, meeting adjourned at 5:24.